One of the most exciting features of DaVinci Resolve is the Fusion page. It's a feature-rich 2D and 3D compositing application that has been used in countless films and TV shows over the past 30 years. Fusion was introduced as a dedicated page in Resolve 15, making it possible for you to jump immediately from editing right into compositing and animation with no need to export or launch a separate application. Start by opening the L14 timeline. When working on visual effects or motion graphics, you often need to work on a single shot. So at its simplest, you only have to park the playhead over the clip you want to open in Fusion, then click the Fusion page button. Locate the old building clip toward the end of the timeline and park the playhead over it. This clip is sitting in the V2 track above another clip on V1. The clip that gets sent to Fusion is the one with the highest track priority. So if your intention is to work on a clip in a lower video track, you'll want to disable any clips, titles, or generators positioned above it. Now click the Fusion page button or press Shift 5. When you switch to the Fusion page, the playhead is in the same position it was in the Edit page. The page is organized into 4 main sections. At the top of the UI, there are 2 main viewers. When working in Fusion, you can send your images to either viewer. Below the viewers is a toolbar that gives you access to the most commonly used effects. There are actually quite a few more effects available in Fusion than appear here. These are only the visible ones. Below the toolbar is the node editor. This is the area you will build your effect. Changes you make to your effects will happen in the inspector along the right. Okay, let's get some work done. When you send a clip to the Fusion page, you'll see 2 nodes, a media in node and a media out node. Unlike the edit and cut pages, Fusion does not use a timeline metaphor. Instead, it uses a branching tree metaphor where image processing units called nodes are connected together to create the final composite image. Unlike traditional layer-based interfaces like After Effects and Motion, working with a node tree is much faster because you avoid having to drill down layer after layer to access the one clip that you want to make an adjustment to. In Fusion, the image processing flows from one node to another, allowing you to see your entire composite as one interconnected flow diagram. As you begin adding nodes, you'll find yourself needing to pan around the node editor. On a Mac, hold down the Command and Shift key, then drag in the gray area. On Windows, use the Control key. Any clip that you send to Fusion from either the Edit page or the Cut page is represented by the Media In node. The Media Out node represents the image that is sent back to the timeline on the Edit page. Select the Media In node. Press the 1 key on your keyboard to display the image in the left viewer. When a viewer is active for a selected node, a white dot appears on the lower left of the node. If the white dot is on the left viewer is active, and when the white dot is on the right viewer is active. To send the Media In node image to the right viewer, press the 2 key. This node is now sending its image to both viewers, and if you select the Media Out node, you'll see that it's not sending any image data. Press 2. Now Media In 1 is being sent to the left, and Media Out 1 is being sent to the right. My preferred workflow is to have my final output in the right viewer, and use the left viewer for making adjustments to the node I'm working on. But this is really a matter of preference. In any event, these 2 nodes form the foundation of everything you do in Fusion. As your node tree grows in complexity, you'll find it helpful to rename your nodes by their function or image. Right-click on the first node and choose Rename from the menu, or press F2. Name the node Nevada and press Return. Select the output node, press F2 and name it Output, and press Return. Directly below the viewers is a time ruler that displays your clip in frame numbers, not timecode. Dragging the orange playhead moves to different frames, just like dragging the jog bar in the Edit page. These vertical yellow bars indicate the render range, which is the portion of the clip that is being used in the Edit page timeline. The frames outside the yellow bars are the handle frames. As you drag, the current frame number appears in the lower right of the left viewer. The numbers in the lower left are the render range, start frame, and end frame. You can quickly jump to any frame by double-clicking the frame number input box and entering a number. I'll enter 44 and press Return to jump the playhead to the start of the render range. Click in the node editor to exit the frame entry box. Under the time ruler is a 2-handed scroll bar you can use to zoom into the render range. Drag the left edge of the scroll bar inward toward the center of the time ruler until the yellow line is near the beginning. Now do the same for the other end until the yellow line is near the end. Now it's much easier to see the range of frames we'll be working with. Now it's time to add our first effect. Press the spacebar to begin playing back the clip. In terms of its relationship to extraterrestrial activity. Press the spacebar again to pause playback. Because we're about to do effects work, we don't need to hear the audio, so disable it by clicking the audio icon in the upper left corner of the toolbar. Now press the spacebar again. It was a very windy day in the desert when we shot this, and even though we used a tripod, you can still see some camera movement. In order to deal with that, we're going to add a tracker tool, then stabilize the shot. If a node is still selected, click in the gray area to deselect it. There are a few ways to access tools in Fusion. Reveal the Effects Library pane, then click the disclosure arrow to reveal a list of tools by category. You'll find the tracker in the Tracking category. Close the Effects Library. To access this same list of tools, right-click anywhere in the gray area of the node editor and choose Add Tool. Scroll down to the bottom, and there you'll find the Tracking category. But the fastest way to call up the tool is to bring up the Select Tool dialog. Press the Shift and Spacebar keys to bring up a window. In the search field, enter Track to narrow the list to just the trackers. Notice in the parentheses that there's a 3 or 4 letter abbreviation code for each tool. This allows you to quickly pinpoint tools that you use frequently. With the tracker selected, click Add. So now we have a tracker node, just floating out here in the ether. Before the node can work on our image, it needs to be connected to the image pipeline. Nodes in Fusion often have multiple inputs. In the case of the tracker tool, there are 3. The inputs are represented by arrows indicating the flow of image data into the node. Hovering your pointer over each of them will bring up a tooltip that will tell you the function of the input. Outputs are represented by squares. As the image data leaves a node, it flows into the next node as indicated by the direction of the arrow. So we need the Nevada node to flow into the tracker, then the output of the tracker to flow into the output node. One way to do this is to hold down the Shift key, then drag the node over the connection line between the Nevada and output nodes. When the line turns blue and yellow, release your mouse. Let's try doing this another way. Select the node and press Delete. Then select the Nevada node. Press Shift Spacebar to bring up the Tools dialog. The previously selected tool remains active. Click Add. If you know where your node should be connected in the image processing pipeline, this is the fastest method because all the connections are made for you. Before we begin working on this shot, I need to point out that Resolve was really built for a 3-button mouse. The third button being a clickable scroll wheel. I would highly suggest that if you use Resolve regularly, you should purchase one because it will make certain operations much easier, both in the Fusion page and in the color page. For example, in order to pan around the node editor, I need to hold down the Shift and Command keys on my Mac. With a 3-button mouse, I simply hold down the scroll wheel and drag. No modifier keys are necessary. Now back to the shot. With the tracker node selected, press 1 to send the image to the left viewer. This is the viewer we'll be working in. You should see a green tracker window. Move your pointer over the tracker and zoom into it. On a Mac, hold down the Command key while swiping up on the Magic Mouse. The tracker works best with small, sharp details and high contrast. The pinnacle of the roofline should make a good tracking point. To move the tracker, there's a small handle on the upper left corner of the inner tracker window. Click and drag it to the intersection of the roof and the sky. You can adjust the size of the area that will be tracked by dragging the edge of the inner rectangle. This small tracking area will force Resolve to only look for pixel patterns within that defined area. In general, larger track windows are best for larger, faster movements of the image, and for slower, gradual movements, a smaller track window is better. During a track, Resolve tries to maintain the specific arrangement of pixels within this pattern area. If the pixel movement goes outside this area, Resolve tries to locate and match the movement in the wider search area defined by the dashed rectangle. You can adjust the width of the search area by dragging on the outer box. The larger the area, the more processor-intensive tracking becomes, but with a little experience, you should find a happy medium between track stability and speed. You can add more than one tracker to an image. For stabilizing an image, you can often get away with one tracker. Two or more trackers will often be necessary if the image rotates or scales, such as you would typically see in a handheld shot. With the tracker selected, all of its parameters appear in the inspector to the right. In the center of the window is the tracker list. To add another tracker, click the Add button. In the upper left of the viewer, choose Fit so you can see the second tracker. Move the tracker over the telephone pole in the background and zoom in and center up the tracker in the frame. Move the tracker until the center crosshairs are over the crossbeam of the telephone pole. Now adjust the pattern width and height. Before we track the shot, move the playhead to the yellow line indicating the beginning of the clip. In the inspector, click the Track Forward from Current Time button. As it tracks, watch the tracker in the left viewer. The tracker is doing a very good job. Once the track is complete, a confirmation window will appear. Click OK to dismiss the window. The next step is to reveal the operation panel of the inspector and choose Match Move as the operation type. Then choose Background Only as the merge method. Since this shot was recorded on a tripod, turn off rotation and scaling so the Match Move only has to deal with position. To move your playhead to the beginning of the clip, press Command left arrow on a Mac or Control left arrow on a PC. Set the left viewer back to fit, then press the space bar to watch the stabilized clip play back in the right viewer. Pause playback. Because the stabilizer is working with micro vibrations, it may be hard to tell if the stabilizer made any difference. Let's use the two viewers to compare the unstabilized clip with the stabilized version. Select the Nevada node and make sure its image is being sent to the left viewer by pressing 1. Select the Media Out node and make sure its image is being sent to the right viewer by pressing 2. Zoom into the image in both viewers and center them so we're seeing the same zoomed image side by side. Press the spacebar. The image coming out of the Nevada node is very shaky. The image coming out of the Media Out node is stable. Pause playback and set each viewer to fit. If your playback is slow, you can increase performance by right-clicking next to the transport controls and turn off high quality and motion blur. The green bar below the time ruler indicates frames that have been rendered or cached to RAM. Any green section should play back in real time. The amount of frames that are rendered is dependent on your hardware setup and the length, resolution, and frame rate of the clip. When the size of the cache reaches the Fusion memory limit set in your preferences, the lower priority cache frames are discarded to make room for the new cache frames. You can keep track of how much RAM cache has been used by looking at the use indicator in the lower right of the UI. For our next effect, we'll be using the Paint tool to remove the telephone pole in the background. Because the shot has been stabilized, this should be a fairly straightforward operation. Select the tracker node, then click the Paint tool icon in the toolbar. Press 1 to send the Paint node to the left viewer and zoom into the image. With the Paint tool active, you'll see a green circular outline. This is the paintbrush. The size and softness of the brush can be adjusted in the Brush Controls area of the inspector. Set the size to 0.0055. Leave the softness at the default. Next, you'll need to choose a paint application mode. By default, it's set for color. So if you click in the color field, then start painting on the image, that's the color that will be used. I'll undo that. To paint with a clone brush, click the Clone button. In the upper left of both viewers is a palette of paint tools. When we begin cloning out the telephone pole, we want the clone pixels to apply to every frame in the render range. Using the default multi-stroke tool will only clone the frame you're working on. This was kind of a big gotcha for me when I first started using the clone tool, so remember to select the stroke tool before you begin cloning. Notice the X in the center of the brush. The X is the pixel target you'll be cloning from, so you'll need to create an offset. If you've ever used Photoshop, the process is very similar. You first need to hold down the Option or Alt key, then click on the pixels you want to clone from. Option or Alt click to the left of the telephone pole, then start painting. Once you've removed the left crossbeam, Option or Alt-click on the right of the crossbeam and resume painting. To remove the center pole, I'll Option-click to the left of the pole at the top, then drag the brush downward over the pole until it's completely removed. There may be some areas you'll want to resample and paint over to clean up any visual artifacts. That looks really good. Reset the left viewer to fit. Now return to the Edit page. Because we have Smart Caching enabled, the clip will automatically cache after 5 seconds, and you can play it back in real time. But in terms of its relationship to extraterrestrial activity, so hopefully after this lesson, the Fusion page is not as scary as you thought. In the next lesson, we'll look at some of the cool things you can do with text in the Fusion page.